An American veterinary practice will charge you $86 to look at your dog for 11 minutes. And at most practices, that $86 does not cover what the 11 minutes cost to deliver. The room, the nurse, the lease on the analyzer in the back, the license on the wall. The consultation is priced at or under cost, deliberately, and the people who set that price know it to the cent. Now the other number. In December 2024, one American veterinary group was folded into another at 17 to 18 times earnings. 17 to 18. That is the sort of multiple people pay for software companies. So here is a business that gives away the only product it advertises, and a queue of buyers valuing it like it holds a patent. Neither of those figures is a mistake, and both of them are true on the same Tuesday morning. Because a veterinary practice is not what it looks like. It looks like a waiting room with a set of scales bolted to the floor, a jar of biscuits on the counter, a nurse in navy scrubs, and a vet with a stethoscope and 15 minutes. Almost none of that is the business. The business is what gets decided inside those 15 minutes, who owns the room where it gets decided, and what that room is worth to somebody who will never meet your dog and has no interest in meeting her. By the end of this, you will know why the cheapest line on your invoice is the only thing the vet actually sold you, and why every other line on it was chosen before you parked. Right, the dog. 9-year-old Labrador, 31 kilos, scratching at one ear and shaking her head in the car park before she is even through the door. Ears are one of the most common reasons a dog is brought into an American clinic. And this one is the unit I am going to follow all the way down, because the entire industry runs through it. Front desk, 904. The nurse weighs her, takes her temperature, scans the microchip. None of that is billed to anybody. 911. The vet comes in, lifts the ear flap, has the otoscope in for about 40 seconds, and then says the sentence that converts a visit into an invoice. Let us take a swab and have a proper look at it. That is ear cytology. $25 to $80 depending on the postcode, so call it $55. A nurse stains the slide in the back, the vet reads it down a lens for 90 seconds, and it is yeast, heavy growth. Eardrops, $40. And then the second sentence, the one that actually pays for the building. She does this every summer, doesn't she? This is not an ear infection. This is atopic dermatitis, and the ear is only the place where you can see it. Apoquel. $30 to $90 a month depending on the size of the animal, so for 31 kilos, call it $70. Not a course, not until it clears up. For the rest of her life, or until it stops working, whichever arrives first. Exam 86, cytology 55, drops 40, first month of tablets 70. $251, plus one more item that costs nothing at all, a recheck, booked for a fortnight. Hold on to the recheck. The recheck is the entire business, and it is the only line on the page that reads as free. Before we open up where that $251 actually goes, and almost none of it stays in that building, I want one number from you. What is the largest vet bill you have ever been handed, and what was it for? Not roughly. The figure that was printed on the paper. I ask because somebody watching this paid $5,000 for one knee on a dog they had had for 11 years, and has never once said that number out loud to another person, and somebody else watching is going to be quoted almost exactly the same thing before the month is out, and those two people will never compare notes. And if the keyboard is already open, tapping like and subscribing is the only signal I get that these are worth building. Now, the $251, the $86 consultation is the only line on that invoice that is purely the vet's judgment, and it carries the thinnest margin of anything in the building. Staff cost eats close to half of a general practice's revenue before the owner takes a cent out. The median American veterinarian earned $125,510 as of May 2024. The nurse who weighed the dog, held her still, stained the slide, and read the drop instructions out twice. Median $45,980. That ratio is the shape of the room. One license generates the charge, and everybody else in the building exists to keep that license standing in front of an animal for as many minutes of the working day as physically possible. And the license is expensive to get. Average debt for the American veterinary class of 2025 that borrowed at all? $212,499. 82% of them borrowed. Mean starting pay for a new graduate? Somewhere around $130,000. So the person deciding whether your Labrador needs a $55 swab walked into that consulting room owing about 1.5 years of gross salary before she has bought a car or paid a deposit on a flat. Here is the part that reorders everything else. She very probably does not own the practice. Roughly a quarter to a third of American general practices are now corporate-owned. And in specialty and emergency work, the referral hospital you get sent to at 2 in the morning with something torn, it runs at about 75%. Corporate groups employ something in the region of 40% of practicing American vets. So the 86, the 55, the 40, and the 70 do not land in the pocket of the woman holding the otoscope. They land in a monthly management report in a different city, read by somebody who has never smelled an infected ear. And that is where the actual product finally shows itself, because it was never the swab. A single doctor independent practice sells for something like 5 to 8 times earnings. A healthy multi-doctor practice, 10 to 15. A consolidated platform, one with 100 clinics and a finance department and a procurement contract, changes hands at 17 to 18. Nothing about the medicine changes across that spread. Same ear, same yeast, same $40 drops, same nurse. What changes is the size of the pile. Buy 50 practices at 7 times, staple them together, sell the staple at 17. Your dog is not the customer of that transaction. Your dog is the evidence that the cash flow is real. Now who is buying? Mars, the confectionery company, the Snickers company, completed its purchase of VCA in September 2017 for around $9.1 billion, having already taken full ownership of Banfield back in 2007. Mars Veterinary Health today runs in the region of 3,000 clinics worldwide, employs about 70,000 people, and handles roughly 35 million pet visits a year. Mars also makes Pedigree, Whiskas, Cesar, Iams, and Royal Canin, which means the prescription diet on the shelf behind the till, in the hospital, recommended by the vet, is frequently manufactured by the company that owns the hospital and employs the vet. That is not a scandal. It is simply the whole loop, sitting in plain sight inside one waiting room. Jab Holding, the European investment house behind a long list of coffee brands, bought National Veterinary Associates in June 2019 in a deal reported at around $5.3 billion. Then Compassion First, then Sage, then Ethos Veterinary Health for $1.65 billion, agreed in August 2021 and completed the following year. JAB also went and bought pet insurers. Sit with that arrangement for a moment. One holding company can own the insurer that reimburses the bill and the hospital that writes it. Then there is the machinery. IDEXX Laboratories turned over $3.9 billion in 2024, 92% of it companion animal, at a gross margin of 61%, and carries a market capitalization of roughly $45 billion. Its model is the oldest one in commerce. The analyzer goes into the back room on terms that make it easy to say yes to, and then the clinic buys the slides, the cartridges, and the reagents for as long as that machine stays plugged in. Every $55 cytology and every in-house blood panel at $100 to $200 feeds a consumable order. The clinic does not own the laboratory. The clinic is the laboratory's route to market. And the tablets. Zoetis, the animal health business spun out of Pfizer, runs at over $9 billion a year, and its fastest-moving companion animal lines are precisely the ones your Labrador has just been enrolled in: skin and the monthly injections for joint pain. Chronic conditions, not cures. A dog that itches every summer for 6 more summers is not a patient with a problem. She is a standing order with a heartbeat, and she was signed up at 9:23 on a Tuesday morning by a woman who was trying to help her. None of this started with pets. The first veterinary school in the world was authorized at Lyon in 1761 by Claude Bourgelat and opened its doors in January 1762. And it was built for horses. A horse in 1762 was not company, it was capital equipment. Transport, plowing, cavalry. The Royal Veterinary College followed in London in 1791. Iowa State opened the first public American veterinary college in 1879. For nearly 2 centuries, the profession existed to protect assets that generated money. Herds, teams, remounts, and the economics of it were brutally simple, because a farmer will spend on a cow precisely what the cow is worth, and not $1 past it. The pet clinic is the recent invention, and the interesting thing is who invented it. Banfield started in 1955 in Portland, Oregon, founded by Warren J. Weggert, one shop. Its decisive move was not medical at all. It put its hospitals inside PetSmart stores, next to the food and the leads, where the footfall already was. VCA was founded in Los Angeles in 1986 by Neil Tauber and the brothers Robert and Arthur Anton, and it was assembled from the beginning as a thing to be built up and sold on. The roll-up did not arrive in veterinary medicine from somewhere else. Veterinary medicine is one of the places the roll-up was worked out, which brings in the regulators. In Britain, the Competition and Markets Authority opened a review in September 2023, escalated it into a full market investigation on 23 May 2024, and published its final report on 24 March 2026. The trigger was volume. 56,000 responses came in, 45,000 of them from ordinary pet owners. In a sector worth £6.7 billion, the CMA found that 6 groups, CVS, IVC Evidencia, Linnaeus, Medivet, Pets at Home, and Vet Partners, had gone from owning roughly 10% of British practices in 2013 to over 60%. Fewer than 40% of practices published any prices online. Fewer than half of pet owners knew their practice was owned by a chain at all. 29% were given written pricing before non-routine treatment. The remedies take effect on 23 September 2026, and one of them is a cap on the fee a practice may charge simply for writing a prescription. £21 for the first, £12.50 for each one after it. Read that last remedy again. A competition regulator had to legislate the price of a piece of paper, because the piece of paper is what lets you buy the tablets somewhere else. The cost of the model does not fall only on owners. A CDC study published in 2018, covering 11,620 veterinary death records from 1979 to 2015, found American male veterinarians died by suicide at 2.1 times the rate of the general population, and female veterinarians at 3.5 times. Support staff turnover runs somewhere between 23 and 35% a year, depending on whose survey you take, against a national norm nearer 12 to 15. And on the other side of the consulting table, Gallup found 52% of American pet owners had delayed veterinary care because of what it cost. When they do not delay it, the financing is already sitting at the front desk. The standard deferred interest veterinary credit card charges 32.99% retroactively on the entire balance if you miss the promotional window by a single day. And here is what should be keeping every buyer paying 17 times earnings awake. The visits are going away. American clinic visit volumes fell 3.5% in 2022, 1.4% in 2023, 2.6% in 2024, and 3.1% in 2025. Wellness visits fell 3.8%. Product-only visits fell 6.2%. Meanwhile, the price of veterinary services has been climbing at 5 to 6% a year against general inflation nearer 2.5%. Fewer animals through the door, each one paying considerably more. That is not growth. That is a shrinking number of people absorbing a widening bill, and it holds right up until the moment they stop absorbing it. The pharmacy line is walking out of the building as well. Chewy's health and pharmacy segment did around $1.2 billion in its 2024 financial year, and the 17 times multiple only exists whilst the debt underneath it is cheap. Take the visits down, take the tablets online, push the borrowing cost up, and the machine does not break loudly. It simply stops being worth 17 times anything, and every practice bought at that number becomes a problem for somebody's fund. So go back to the diary entry. 14 days out, 9:15. Ear recheck, 31 kilo Labrador. You were not charged a penny for that line. It is the most valuable line on the page, because that is what the buyer at 17 times earnings is actually purchasing, not the practice. Not the vet's hands, not the yeast, not the drops. The near certainty that in a fortnight you will drive back, park in the same space, and pay whatever the itemized total says, because it is her, and because you have already started. You were not a customer in that room, you were a forecast. The 11 minutes were the only thing anybody sold you that morning, and everything after them, the swab, the tablets, the fortnight, the 6 summers, had been priced, modeled, and counted before your car was out of the car park. If you now read that itemized bill differently, drop a like and a subscribe. That is genuinely what decides whether the next one of these gets built. The pet insurance one is the closest relative to this video, the same money and the same fear, just collected before the animal is ill rather than after. See you in the next one. Now, your biggest bill. Go on then.